What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Prairie Puck Podcast. Today we have a very special guest on, Canuck Clay from YouTube. Welcome to the show, man. We're very, very happy to have you on. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Canucks have won 2 games, albeit against the last, the two worst teams in the league. But before we get started, honestly, it's a thrill to be with you guys. We were having some fun before we pressed the record button, and I realized that you guys are actually all the same age as my sons, who are 20 and 18. So if I come across as a little fatherly or a little bit, parental guidance, it's all to love, brothers. I hope you can appreciate that.
Hey, I can no
Veteran
problem, man. No
leadership.
problem. We got you.
Years of experience.
Exactly.
There you go. That's what I say.
But yeah, very, very happy to have you on. Canucks are a very interesting team, so hopefully this will be a very good conversation because, like everyone knows, I'm in Vancouver. This is my second favorite team, the Canucks. I watch them quite a lot with my dad when I can, and even by myself with friends. So I know a lot about this team, not as much as you, obviously, Clay, but I like to hold myself up there with some of the Canuck fans. So let's talk. Where should we talk about? Well, like you said, we've won 2 in a row. It's been against albeit the worst teams in the NHL, but nonetheless, imagine if they'd lost, right? That's always what I like to think about when you're on a skidding team like the Canucks are. I think the fandom can at least celebrate something good right now in those 2 wins. You had Hughes last night with 4 points, I believe he had. So really good night there from him. You love seeing that, and also Pettersson finally scoring his goal against Montreal is another big positive. So take us through what it's been like the last few weeks on the skid, and then where the fans are right now.
Yeah, no, I'll try and make sure I do this in digestible bits because I could go I could take up your whole hour, but I won't. I promise. And by the way, it's funny, Jake, how you and I probably live 5 minutes away from each other, yet and Vancouver is your second favorite team. Where I'm not just saying this, guys. Winnipeg Jets are my second favorite team too. So when I got the invite, I was thrilled. So let's really quickly in the big picture. The big picture is Canucks fans are not happy with management, ownership has a lot to do with it too, but management. Jim Benning, 8 seasons and only 2 playoff runs in those 8 seasons. And the tough thing is, this year there were so many expectations because you have a really good young core here. Demko, Pettersson, and Hughes. You have an elite player or close to elite player at all 3 positions: center, defense, goal. Right? And Pettersson, Hughes, and Demko. Surround them with really good players like Miller, Horvat, Besser, and then even Ekman Larson and Garland, who've been really good since they came over.
Good.
Yeah, so some changes in the offseason. So you can see why fans had high expectations this season. People were talking about, they're going to challenge. Maybe they're not Edmonton good or Vegas good, and I know we're going to get into this. No one expected Calgary to be this good, but they were talking about 3rd or 4th for the Canucks. So I think this is the big picture, you guys. I think we overachieved in the bubble 2 seasons ago, right, when Demko put the whole team on his back against Vegas.
Yes.
But we underachieved last year because we had the worst COVID outbreak in professional sports. So probably overachieved in 2020 playoffs, underachieved in the 2021 season. The truth is somewhere in the mushy middle, as we like to say. I do think they've underachieved this season. Pettersson, Besser, they've been really slow. But are they a playoff team? They've almost dug themselves too much of a hole now. They're 6 games under 500. Now, granted, 10 out of the next 14 are at home, and you don't have to win all 10. But if you all 14, but if you go 10-4, 9-5, then you're closer to 500 by the end of December, and then you can chip away at that a couple games per month in the new year. But that's a tall ask, given that we are already 6 games under.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And as Jets fans, especially of late, we know what it's like to start following the standings and having to try to get up. The Jets have been on. I would like to say, it's technically a losing streak of 1, but it's definitely not.
It's a glorified losing streak. It's a glorified losing streak of 6.
It is, really, at this point, and potentially 7 tomorrow with the way we've been playing. Paul Maurice is probably on the hot seat for the first time unanimously with the media and the fans in his 8-year career with the Winnipeg Jets, and it has been rough. So, I can kind of relate with how both of the teams are. Obviously not to the same type of extreme that the Canucks are, because like you said, this was a lot of expectation, and to be last place right now in the Pacific Division is not where anyone thought that they would be, but I think that there's a lot of similarities right now with how the Canucks are and the Jets, because the Jets are an all-in team right now, as you know, right? And you will go out, you spend right to the cap, you bring in Schmidt, you bring in Dylan, you go out and you fill out and get a penalty killer in Riley Nash. You have your prospects coming up. You've got Cole Perfetti, all these situations and variables. And now we're a team that has dropped 6 in a row, potentially going in tomorrow with almost 7, and are on a massive skid where we were first place in the Central Division less than a week and a half ago.
And I have a quick question.
6.
Yeah. Yes, and for all 3 of you guys, I was actually at the game on November 19th.
So was I.
Oh yeah, okay. So where was that, Jake and Carter and Zach, in terms of the 6-game losing streak? Did that kick it off?
That
Or
was
were they
the
already?
second
That was
loss
the
in the
second
back
one
to
because
yes.
that was our first. That was our first one in regulation, though.
Yeah.
And actually, it's worth noting that the Jets on the road are not there are two Jets teams. The Jets at home are actually a respectable team. They're 7-3-1. The Jets on the road are 3-5-3, which is not good at all.
Yes.
And if you look at the teams they've dropped games to, they're not good games. Like you get games like against Columbus where you lose 3-0 and you don't show anything, or games like where McDavid gets to McDavid. It's not fun times. And actually, I would like to point out one thing that you mentioned. You said if you guys could win like 10 of the next 14 at home. Is that what you said?
Sorry, I said 10 of the next 14 are at home, but
Are
we'd
at
have
home,
to go.
right.
But we'd have to go 10-4 in December,
Right.
to get
So,
back to 500. Yeah.
The thing is with that though is unfortunately the Canucks are not the best team at home either. Like the Canucks, granted they have two sub 500 levels on home and on the road, but it's kind of like pick your poison. So at home they're 3-6-1.
Yeah.
And on the road they're 5-8-1, which I don't know which one you'd prefer, because I guess like they're both like it really depends like quantity of wins against like ratio of wins. Like it's really tough there, but
So
yeah,
what you're
like,
saying, Zach, is they got to invent a location that doesn't count as home or away, and that's where the Canucks.
I like that.
What I'm
Yep.
saying is you need a stadium series, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, let's keep BC Place closed again, and we'll host another outdoor game. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
And we'll bench Luongo. We'll bring him out of retirement just to keep him on the bench, just for the old time's
Don't
sake.
go there, Jake. Don't go there.
Why not, Clay? Why not? Let's bring out the wounds, right? Oh man, what a time. Good times.
But yeah, like honestly, it's one of those things where it's like the Jets are beginning to skid a lot, especially at home. Like they're losing games that we kind of. Thing is with the Jets, we kind of relied on them to win games at home, and then you get a game like the Coyotes game where you like. I walked into that arena because I was one of the few unfortunate souls to be there. I walked in saying, "Yeah, this is going to be easy. This is the Coyotes. This is the 4-win Arizona Coyotes." And then I left the arena saying, "This is the 5-win Arizona Coyotes."
Are you familiar with that game at all, Clay? For the Jets, for their last game they played against Arizona?
Vezina played like Vezina Melka.
The Winnipeg Jets had 46 shots on net on
Their rookie
Vezina.
goaltender stood on his head.
And we were shut out. And the Arizona Coyotes won the game 1-0 with 15 shots against on Hellebuck.
And who
It
got
was Roussel from Beagle, right?
Roussel from Erickson.
No, from
Even
Louis
worse.
Erickson.
Even worse, my friend. Even worse.
And then Louis Erickson almost scored in the third period shorthanded, and I almost immediately stabbed the person next to me when I yelled out, "Why is Erickson playing better?" And someone who was like, "Well, Erickson's not that bad," and I just went,
What? Who said that? Give me their phone number and their digits. I'm going after
that
them.
was my thought
No
too.
way.
Okay.
I was like,
I gotta say one
Yeah.
thing. I do find it funny though, Zach, at the game where someone was like, "Well, at least the Jets are getting a lot of." Zach's like, I only care about the ones that go in the net.
yes, they're like, it's 41-14. It was 41-14. So they're having a good game. It's just a really hot goalie. I only care about the amount of pucks that go in the net. Thank you.
Yeah.
With all my Caesar saltiness, and just turn back.
So I'm really curious. So I feel bad for your struggles. No, not really. No, I kind of do.
Well, it's
Can you, though, as a Canucks fan, feel bad for other struggles?
Yeah.
50 years of struggles, man. 50 years.
Like pot kettle black. I know.
Yes.
I know.
And misery loves company, as they say. So here's, as a Canucks fan, diehard, I want to know. I want to hear from all three of you, and whatever order you want to go in. But I want to hear all three of you. Give a letter grade to Nate Schmidt. I want to.
I was
hear
just
how
about
Nate
to
Schmidt
point
is doing.
that out. I was
Yeah.
actually
Okay,
funny you bring that
so-
up, Clay. Zach, go first.
I'll go first. Nate Schmidt. I want to give him an A-, like a B+, A-. I really like Nate Schmidt. Nate Schmidt has done things with not just himself, but the knock-on effect that he's had with guys like Josh Morrissey.
Yes.
And really opened up Josh Morrissey's ability to shoot the puck on net. I've really appreciated. And he's already got... Right. He's already got...
I'm pulling up his stats right now.
He's got 12 points. He's already got 12 points, which is 3 less than he had last year, which was 15.
Yeah. Great.
And he's been, for all accounts, an absolute pleasure to have in the locker room, which I believe. And also, he fits in with our team, which is be good at hockey and be American. So yeah, I'm really happy with Nate Schmidt. B+ to A-.
Yeah,
honestly.
I would honestly give him I wouldn't give him an A-. Actually, I'd give him a solid A. I think he's been fantastic. Almost agree with everything that Zach said. Not to mention that he's 6th on the team in points. Like, he has been an incredible, and I also just got to say, I think it's really funny because when the Schmidt deal went down with Vancouver acquiring him from Vegas for the 3rd, I told every single person I know that was a stupid move. I did not think that Schmidt would ever gel nicely with that top 4 that they have in Vancouver. I was right. I don't like to toot my own horn on that, but I also thought it was ironic that when he was traded to Winnipeg, I thought that made the most sense even before he was originally acquired by the Canucks because Kevin Cheveldayoff has been very high on Nate Schmidt ever since we played them in the Western Conference Final. He's been really pushing to try to get him even before that contract was signed. I believe he made an offer to him, and I think you already know as well, Clay, that he rejected the trade to come to Winnipeg before he had a call with Paul Stastny, and Paul Stastny actually convinced him with Brendan Dillon to make that trade go through because we'd already acquired Dillon after. So he's been amazing. It's been a gift, honestly, that we got him. I never thought we would after the news about him falling through, and I give him a solid A. He's been great, and I think it's funny how he's having a bounce-back year with us, and OEL is having a great bounce-back year with you guys as well. So it's nice to see both those two players bouncing back and getting to their levels they were before their past struggles in their seasons.
Well said. What do you got, Carter?
Jake, what's the letter there on your jersey?
A. I agree, my friend.
That is what he's getting. I have been very pleased with Nate Schmidt, and like you two were saying, the main thing that I feel like with Schmidt is if you look like, and one of the things that shows this is the amount of points of his that are assists as to goals. He makes the players around him better, which I feel like for a team like the Jets, where you'll have players that are great like Mark Scheifele going on a little bit of a slump, having those players that make the players around them better is exactly what we need and exactly what you need to go all the way in the playoffs. So I'm excited to see even more so what's going to come from Nate Schmidt when we go into the first round of the playoffs.
So to quote Nate Schmidt and on his partnership with Josh Morrissey, he doesn't talk and I do all the talking. And I think that is a perfect partnership there between Josh Morrissey and Nate Schmidt, honestly. Like,
yeah.
It's the defense problems I think have been somewhat rectified. I feel like I have more faith in defense. I just think that there are games where our offense doesn't show up or our team doesn't as a whole play with enough heart. And I think that's different than just saying that they're overall bad. Like, and just going in and saying, like, it's not like last year where I could say Derek Forbert is our top 4 defenseman. Our defense is bad. It's one of those things where I look at our defense and I say, our defense actually has a fair amount of skill.
The weakest link is Logan Stanley, and he plays 10 minutes or under a night, so it's not like that's a big worrisome thing you have to worry about, right? Like, he's there, and he's solid, but sometimes he's not reliable. That's the only real flaw we have with our defense.
He plays with Dylan DeMello, who's very reliable.
One of the most analytically defensive players in the entire league. He's in the top 5, I believe, so that's a very underrated player.
Where it's not like our team is actually weak in Rays, it's just how they play with the guys they have, which I think is a better to be in.
Well, I think every Canucks fan would take Nate Schmidt right now over Tucker Poolman.
I was just about to ask you that. I was going to say, the Vancouver Canucks have become the snipers out of the Winnipeg Jets free agent defensemen that hit the market. You take Tyler Myers on that 6x6, and now you take Tucker Poolman at 3 for 9 year, 3 million, 9 million over 3 years or whatever that deal is. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's like 3 for 3,
4
for 4.
No, it's 4 times 2.5.
Whew! Oh God!
Remember when we were worried? We were so scared we re-signed him.
Yeah, how is Tucker Poolman? You know what? I want to ask you about that, Clay. How are our former Jets this year on your guys' blue line and Myers and Poolman?
Yeah, it's funny. A third of our starting blue line courts is ex-Jets. Okay, Myers, he gets a bad rap. Maybe he was like this in Winnipeg too because of a sheer size. When honestly, it sounds so cliche, but when he makes mistakes, they are magnified because of his size.
Yes,
whether he's trying to stretch out. Yeah, I don't know if he did this in Winnipeg, but Myers always seems to end up stretched out on his belly, trying to, and he should cover about 18 feet of ice, right? Given his height, but somehow pucks always get through him. Obviously he's got pretty good wheels for a guy his size.
Yes, he does.
He's got offensive instincts, but and he's never going to be the meanest guy despite his size. I think we just want to see more consistent play, but admittedly, I actually think he gets, because his mistakes are magnified. He's actually been solid. He was solid last year,
I agree.
and he's been fine. He's been fine this year. Pullman was interesting. He had a lot of, what's the opposite of fanfare when he came in? A lot of people like, oh, this guy sucks analytically.
Doubt.
This guy's not gonna be that good. Then he had a decent preseason. They put him with OEL, so OEL on the left, and then Pullman on the right. And preseason wise, he was fine. First few games of the season, he was fine. Jake, yeah, you might agree with this there. But then I think it was because of OEL and not because of Pullman, because Pullman, then they tried him with Hughes, and he simply sucked up all Hughes' creativity. Because you can't, you can't. He didn't help Hughes' breakout. He didn't help Hughes' offensive game. So now Pullman has slowly dropped to the third pairing now, and he's playing with a guy who's actually playing on his offside, and Kyle Burrows, as they wait for Travis Hamonic to get vaccinated and blah, blah, blah. And there's a chance when Hamonic comes back, because Luke Shen has played quite well, that Pullman might be the one sitting. But overall...
that would be incredible.
Yeah, overall, not so high. Yeah, not so high on Pullman right now.
Well, I know, and you know what? I think all three of us can unanimously agree that we know exactly what you're talking about, because Tucker Pullman last year and the year before that was a top pairing defenseman for a majority of the season, and he was really bringing down Josh Morrissey. Like we talked about how Morrissey and Schmidt have become such a really good gelled pair together that's so dynamic in their two-way game. Last year, you saw nothing like that from Josh Morrissey, struggling to make breakout passes, not being a real presence in the neutral zone, not being able to move the puck and handle it on his own blue line and on the opposing blue line. He really struggled. And then when you bring Pullman away and you put him with another two-way guy, you succeeded. And I've always said that too, and like Zach and Carter as well. Morrissey just needed to be removed from a guy like that, and I think that you're really seeing it too with Hughes now, like you're saying, now that Pedersen's down, not Pedersen, excuse me, that he's down there now. I think it's really going to make everything gel better, and it's because my friend Justin, he absolutely loved Tucker Pullman to start this season. He thought he was fantastic. He was like, I thought he was going to be crap after what you told me about him when we signed him, and he's been great. And I haven't talked to him a lot recently about the Canucks, so I'd love to know what he's been thinking about him now. Yeah, I'll have to let him know.
That's the thing, though. That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing with last year's lineup, though, is the fact that we only really had 3 reliable defensemen. So what happened was it was pretty much DeMello, Canuck, and Morrissey. Now what we did then was we pretty much cut our losses and said, we will pair each of you up with a guy that we kind of don't trust, but you're going to have to live with. So Morrissey got stuck with Pullman. Canuck got stuck with Forbort, which was, for some reason, the most consistent defense pairing, which was good for about a third of the year. And
ironically, against the Canucks is when Forbort fell off. Forbort had started the season on fire, and then he picked a fight with Hoglander, and Hoglander beat the crap out of him, and then I think Beagle came in and dropped him. Yeah, McEwen came in. McEwen came in.
Only Huglander.
And he sucked after that, had no confidence.
And then sucked.
Never the same.
No,
it was like watching a reverse Rocky movie. Like, he did all that good and then just lost. And then he sucked after that.
Never to recover.
But honestly, and then we'd have DeMello paired with Stanley, who did not have a lot of the trust from people going into that season. And it was one of those things where it's like, we knew who our best 3 defensemen were, but because the rest of the 3 were like anchors, we couldn't play them properly. Like, when we needed a goal, we'd say, Canuck, Morrissey, get out there now. We're not fooling around. Tucker Pullman is not playing with 2 minutes left. Get out now. Like, play.
Except he would.
And that's one of those things where it's like people would think for some reason that because Pullman got a lot of minutes that he was good. No, he played there because we needed to cut our losses. Otherwise, we'd be giving up like 5 goals a game because we had guys that just couldn't skate the length of the ice.
Yeah, last couple seasons have been rough for us on the blue line. Thank God it's been rectified for this year. It's really it really has been a lot of patching. Thank God we finally got there. Never ever seen a team bleed on the blue line as much as the Jets did after that Western Conference final run where they lost literally everybody almost. It was rough.
Well, we lost them. We didn't lose them that year. We lost them the next year.
No, we lost them. We lost a lot after. Trouba was gone after that.
No.
Yep.
Trouba was there for the St. Louis series because he
held
the puck on the
after
wall
St.
while
Louis
he screamed
series.
at him.
Yeah, after St. Louis.
Yeah, okay, but you said Western Conference, which is the year before.
Yeah, but like after that is when because Bufflin was a shell of himself. Either way, I'm getting too into it into the niches of everything with how the individual performances. There. I am really. moving back to the main conversation with the Canucks, I want to talk about coaching. Personally, I've always liked Travis Green. Even in the struggles that the Canucks have been in, he's had my faith. I've really liked how he's been able to mesh the old and new guys together. He's done really good with really figuring out how to best utilize some of these players he's been stuck in, like, getting the best out of Beagle, getting the best out of, oh my god, I'm drawing a blank on who the other guy was.
Garland?
Not Garland, the guy who they just got the guy who scored. Why am I forgetting?
Louis Eriksson?
Either way, Roussel, thank you. I was like the Dallas player, but then I'm like, wait, Louis Eriksson played on Dallas too. Wait, never mind. Either way, Roussel as well. Like, I really liked what he's just been able to do with that team, and I really put this blame on Jim Benning. I really do. I do not personally like Jim Benning. I never have. I've never been a fan of his drafting, even though he has a decent track record with some of these guys. He's really bumbled a lot of the potentials he could have had, not the Vertan and stuff, going back to Hunter Shinkarik as well. Jared McCann. There's a lot of missed stuff. Ole Ulevi drafting by need. Like, a lot of stuff I haven't liked that he's done, and I've been very vocal about it. And I'm just curious to see how you are right now with the coaching and general managing, and where we would like to see that change happen first, if there was to be one implemented.
Yeah, great question, Jake, because you look at, if you want to make a change in the Canucks, and just before they went on this small 2-game win streak, when they were getting decimated, you look at 4 areas. Ownership, but they're not going to fire themselves, right? I think you're stuck with the ownership. So then you go management, which is GM, coaching, or players. If you think that they are doing okay and they haven't quit on the coach and they're doing the best ability, then you're right. Then you do look at, and I started this off by talking about all the young players that we have, and I think that's okay. So then you go to GM and coaching, and I agree with you, Jake. Coaching, Travis Green is a good coach. Yes, it's been 5 seasons, only 1 year of playoffs under him. But apparently he's very well respected around the league. He's very well respected in the dressing rooms. And we heard Canucks players going to bat for him at the end of last season. Remember when he didn't have his contract? Mm-hmm. And that's another reason why I think that Benning goes before Green. Not just because it's easier to chant fire Benning, fire Green doesn't have the same cadence, but because Green has a 2-year contract. And do you want to pay a coach to sit on the sidelines after you? And there's the whole thought of why bring in a new coach before you bring in a new GM? Because when you bring in the GM, he might just jettison the coach that was there for like 2 months. So fire the GM first, see if he likes Green as a coach, and then let the GM decide. But you're right. Let's look at Benning really quickly. Drafting up and down. Good picks: Pettersson, Hughes, Demko, Besser. Bad picks: Vertanen, McCann. The list goes on and on. Okay. Ulevi. McCann was a good pick, but we didn't do anything with him. Trades. Yeah. Trade's okay. Like, I love this Arizona trade. Garland and OEL. OEL's contract's a bit big, but good trade there. Pearson for Goodbranson, that was a good trade. Some decent Miller, great trade, and some really bad ones too. Renting Tyler Toffoli and that kind of thing.
Not keeping him.
There you go. RFAs, good. Good contracts for Hughes, Pettersson, Besser, Horvat at the time.
Demko
UFAs,
as well is a great deal.
Yep. Demko, 5 years at 5. Yeah.
Amazing contract.
UFAs, not so good. Myers, Eriksson, Beagle, Roussel, and Pullman, right? And so you throw it all in a blender. He's maybe average in his moves, but the team has not performed. They've made the playoffs twice in 7 years, and that's the biggest indictment on Jim Benning.
Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't agree more there. I just with the Canucks, for me, it's just they're so close, but they're never close enough. There's that joke about Minnesota before the Kipasov era, that they were the same type of way. Always getting there, always being a playoff team, but never advancing past that first round. And the Canucks, just like, you have this team on paper that should be dominant, even in a tough Pacific. And I just really want to see change. I feel like the fans have been through enough since this 10-year span with this. It's been 10 years, I believe, over a decade now with this current regime, and I just think that it should be. The fans should be rewarded with change, because, like you said, you've got too much good skill in these young players that are signed on value contracts. Even in the case of Demko, and even with Horvat to an extent, these are good deals. Garland on a good contract, playing out of his mind. Like, you've got all these good variables. I just want to see them finally put it together and give the fans something to root for instead of just mediocrity time and time again.
It's rough.
It's rough. It is. And, we know something about mediocrity as well. And I know that sounds so ironic, because I'm putting mediocrity in the same category as a team that went to the Western Conference Final, 4 years ago now. But a lot can happen in the NHL in 4 years, and it's been a rough 3. But guys, how do you feel about the Pacific right now? I want to throw that towards Zach and Carter, because you guys are kind of just sitting there. let me know what are you guys' thoughts right now on the Pacific and everything with the Canucks. Do you think that they have a chance to come back? Clay was saying that they need to go out to 10-4 in December. I believe you were saying to get into a playoff position.
500.
Yeah,
just to get to 500.
So for me, Pacific's an interesting one because a lot of predictions we had for Pacific for top teams, some of them were safe bets, like saying Edmonton would do well. That's I would consider that a safe bet because when you always have a Draisaitl McDavid just kicking around in your kitchen, I think it's always safe that you could really cook something nice.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at other teams that not quite as well predicted. For example, San Jose is 4th. Okay, so I guess we're having a throwback. Anaheim is 3rd, which I personally said that I thought they would do good. No one believed me, but I was like, no, I like their prospects there. Mostly that's on the back of Troy Terry, who's playing
out of his mind,
insane for right now, honestly. Then you have Calgary. Now, Calgary is interesting because Calgary is not as good in certain areas as you think they are. For example, we beat Calgary when we were in Calgary, right? And you think that's a big deal. No, Calgary's 4-2-3 at home, but on the road, they're 9-2-2, which is ungodly. Like, when playing on the road is a lot tougher than playing at home.
Yes.
So to have a record that is almost like quadruple as many wins as you have losses, that is extremely, extremely impressive for a team. Then we look at the teams, honestly, for me, there's the one team that I think, the team that I would most likely be able to claw its way back into the top 4, unfortunately, I don't think is Vancouver. I think it's Vegas. Vegas is Vegas is a mystery team right now because right now, they're pretty much gutted with injuries. Like, they're playing guys I've never heard of, and at every game, they still get their first career goal. Like, you always see it. You're like, oh, yeah, 2 Vegas Golden Knights here, another one there, another one.
That's what happens when you trade every prospect you have to retool every offseason.
One point on that, Jack Eichel had his first skate today after his surgery.
I saw that as well.
Yeah, so how long
that's worth mentioning for the viewers.
I saw a report. I think it was an unofficial report.
They still need to move guys, though, if they become healthy. That's the thing.
But again, there's a lot of variables with that team right now, and they could be looking at a situation like Tampa last year and keeping guys on injury reserve until they get a chance to bring them up, which is a smart thing to do.
Right. If I'm looking at Vancouver, though, the unfortunate part is you need at least 3 teams to really, really unperform in the next. I don't want to say next month because I don't think enough can happen in a month for 3 separate teams. If we're talking a variable of 1 team or maybe even 2 teams, I think it's a possibility that you could see a decline in 2 teams. If we're talking 3, though, I think your window is 2 months to work build its way back up to that point. And those 3 teams would be San Jose, Anaheim, and then Vegas would just need to continue its path of mediocrity right now. Because other than that, I don't know. And like Seattle isn't pressing anything right now, and that's good for Vancouver, especially since they were kind of an unknown variable going in. But at the end of the day, I think I only can see them contending if they have a good 2 months for a wild card spot.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
Clay, I wanted to ask you. Carter.
I was just gonna say, just because both of us. I think you pretty much covered everything there, Zach.
I know.
I will say that we did give a little bit in our Pacific predictions is kind of the surprise at how bad Seattle's been, just because we saw all that defense that they were building up, and then along with they had Drieger, and then they signed Grubauer on top of that, which I was thinking at the time, this could be one of the best goaltending tandems.
Yeah,
and that's been their weakest link has been goaltending.
They have defense, but their goaltending doesn't carry.
Yeah. The goaltending needs to show up and arrive for Seattle. They haven't yet, and that's been the biggest reason why they're kind of in mediocrity right now and below 500. Actually, almost the same record as the Canucks, just 1 less game played, 13-2. Yeah. But yeah, I really agree. I wanted to ask Clay this because, like you said, you have a really tough stretch ahead of you to be able to climb back into a spot and get to 500 and try to get yourself out of it. It's early on in the season, and anything can happen. The St. Louis Blues were last in their division. We all know the story. Cinderella story came and won the cup, and the Canucks could easily climb out and get to that wild card and make a run. If they don't, what type of changes would you want to see, or any changes be made to the personnel right now on the ice? Would you want to see trades being made up into the deadline, guys being moved, Brock Besser's RFA at the end of this year? Yeah. A lot of questions there, right? What do you kind of take us through that kind of headspace right now for Canucks fans?
Great question. You're not touching Pedersen, Hughes, Demko, Höglander, Podkolzin. I think those are among, and Garland maybe, the three guys that, and you nailed it, the three guys that people are talking about, not necessarily that they're going to trade for sure, but you have to at least think about it, is Besser, Miller, and Horvat. And I will drop our little bomb question later. I know that we talked about before right? You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So, but when, and maybe we do it right after this. So when we go, if you look at Besser, you're right, Jake. He's the RFA under the old rules of the qualifying offer. So technically, you have to give him a qualifying offer of $7.5 million. He's not playing at a $7.5 million, but that doesn't mean you can't negotiate now with him. So for the exact same reason why you don't try and trade him now, because his value is very low, maybe you try and negotiate with him now, even if it's a 3-year deal, a 4-year deal. You don't have to go 7 or 8 with him, but don't go 1 year because that takes him to UFA, but go 2 years, go 3 years, and maybe you can sign him for less than the $7.5 million now. So that's Besser. Miller probably gets you the best return because he's on a great $5.25 million contract for a year and a half more. So imagine if you had to trading him at the end of this the trade deadline, a playoff team gets that guy for 2 playoff runs at 5.25. He can play center, can play wing, power play,
Very
penalty kill,
asset.
leader. Oh, he's leading our team in scoring.
Yes, he is.
So he's the most valuable, but for that reason, how you can replace him? And then there's Horvat, who he also becomes a UFA at the end of next season, the same time as JT Miller. He's on a $5.5 million contract. Hard to get a second line center, great leadership, and heart and soul of this team. And maybe, I don't know, I think teams get kind of stubborn with the guys they draft, so that's why I don't see them trading PD and Hughes and Demko.
Not after signing them either like that,
Yeah, exactly. So, and Horvat, I think of the 3, he's the least to go, but you have to look at it too, because if you think that Besser, Miller, and Horvat are all going to make $7 to $8 million, $7 to $7.5 million in the next contract, that's a lot of money. And that's tricky. That's a quarter of your salary cap if you pay those 3 guys $22 million between the 3 of them.
For sure. I really couldn't agree more. I ask myself this question a lot with my friends, is what do you do? And for me, it keeps coming back to JT Miller. Even though, like you said, it's very hard to replace a guy that's leading your team in points, especially when you're underperforming. He's almost a point per game at 23 points. Like, he's been
that goal was nice.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I can't forget that. But as much as I hate saying it, like, you look at Nashville last year going into the deadline with Matthias Ekholm, a very valuable player, had the same type of situation on a very good value deal with a year left. A lot of teams were looking for him, and they were asking the moon. He doesn't get moved, signs an extension. That could be the same type of narrative we see with Miller, but I think that, like what you said, he's too valuable at a 5.25 cap hit at 28 years old, only getting better and really coming into his own since he's arrived with the Canucks. So I think that maybe you trade JT Miller if you're in a situation where you're not going to make the playoffs, because what's the point on keeping him around if you're not going to, do anything with him? And it comes back to what exactly, right? And I know what that's like. We know what that's like as a Jets fan, because we assigned Andrew Kopp to a 1-year deal on a value contract with his arbitration and everything, and he'd be taken to a UFA now, and he's having a great year for us. He had a career year last year, and I'm prepared to lose him, right? But it's one of those things where it's like, risk or reward. The Jets went in, and that was their rental player that they went with, and sign him for the full season instead of getting him at the deadline. So I think that you could move JT Miller. I think he's got a lot of value, and if you're out of a playoff position, you might as well try to get another decent first-round pick and try to build on, maybe, trade something together and move up, or do something, because the Canucks really need to jumpstart this core and get them moving.
Zach Carter, of those 3 guys, Miller, Besser, and Horvat, forget about the return yet. Which of those 3 guys would you want on the Jets?
See, I'm in part. I really like JT Miller, but at the same time, I don't think it's I think he's technically the most likely you move. But honestly, those 3 guys, I see them all as type of interchangeable guys, especially if they move to Winnipeg and that type. In a theoretical world, I would like to at least say as well, though, too, is the thing with the Canucks is you could possibly be in a good position in terms of future building, because the thing is if the Canucks continue in this type of trend where they'll win a couple games but they lose a bunch, at least you know where you stand going into the trade deadline, which I think is a lot better than a lot of other teams which don't necessarily know if they're buyers or sellers.
Right.
And especially if you look at a lot of teams in the wild card chase, and teams that I don't want to predict too far into the future, but if you have teams like Vegas in the middle of the thing, like in the middle of the road type thing, and teams like that, you have teams that have a lot of assets they can move for a bigger asset, which is good and can be very like advantageous to a team like Vancouver. So it's one of those things where it's like, do you think you can come back into the playoffs position this year, or do you cut your losses and realize, you know what, it's okay if we don't play well? Because it's not like we're looking towards a necessarily the best draft spot, but we're looking towards getting assets that we can look into for the future. So, yeah, Carter, what did you think? Who did you like the best of those three?
Well, I mean, I can't remember if this was before we started the call-up or afterwards, but Horvat for Scheifele, I wouldn't mind, to be honest.
We're jumping in there, okay?
Might as well. We might as well. You know what? I want to talk about it. I got a lot to say about this. I think Clay does too.
Can I say just 2 seconds
Yes.
a little bit?
Yes, Carter.
I was talking with Jake about this actually after a recording that we did about kind of the whole kind of the lock that Paul Maurice is in with a few of these players on the Jets roster, where a few of the players almost have power over him, in the sense of where it's kind of a case where the coach is starting to lose a little bit control over the dressing room and who he's able to put on specific lines, because he will get backlash. And, you know, I think his personal feelings for specific players has definitely impacted the lineups that we've been seeing for these past 10 games and whatnot. And one of the guys, you know, to be completely honest, biggest impact of that is Scheifele. And Scheifele just hasn't been performing this season. You know, I can't remember. I believe, Jake, you said where was the source you found where Scheifele was apparently?
Oh, it's just he's just been. Scheifele is kind of the mainstay, but why that they moved from the third line is that Scheifele and we believe that they were like they were not third line
where
guys.
You found that. I'm just
listen. It was on the Winnipeg Sports Podcast, and that's abbreviating it, but like they were an overarching conversation that they had a couple days ago.
But yeah, I mean, like, sure, you know, he's your alternate captain on the team. You give it a try. It hasn't worked. It hasn't. So at that point, you have to learn from that, and we haven't. You know, he hasn't. You know, and we haven't gotten anywhere. So, you got to move one or the other, whether it's Maurice or Scheifele. And I think everyone's saying Maurice at this time.
I say both.
But if we did Scheifele for Horvat, I would take that just like that, heartbeat. As much as I like Scheifele for a lot of things, I think he has some of the greatest hockey knowledge when he uses it.
But Bo Horvat's the same type of player.
But exactly, you know, that's not something impossible to find. And so that's why if we were able to acquire Horvat on the Jets, I would be all for that. And then, you know, you got an extra A, you give it to Stastny or Lowry. That's what you do. That's what you do.
Well, the only thing is,
I don't know how long Stastny's going to be. That's why I'm saying that.
This isn't up for debate. You give it to Stas.
Either way, not talking about letters.
If he's still playing.
Not talking about letters. Moving away from that. The only thing that really comes into play, I think, is the contract. We were talking about how that Bo Horvat is going to be expiring after next season. His contract currently is $5.5 million. Mark Scheifele is making $6.125 up until the end of 2023-2024. So the Canucks would have a little bit of extra benefiting there because they're getting a guy under contract on the value for more. The Jets would have to sign him, and then that brings into the question about, you know, how are you going to sign Pierre-Luc Dubois and Mark Scheifele and Bo Horvat, because Pierre-Luc Dubois will be a unrestricted free agent at the end. Actually, no, a restricted free agent, at the end of this year. He's currently making $5 million, and he's having a great season, and so he's definitely going to be getting at least a bridge deal on an increased pay. So there's a lot of questions there. If you're asking me, in a world where cap doesn't exist, I'm taking that deal every day, because I think personally Pierre-Luc Dubois is a better all-around center than what Mark Scheifele is at this point in his career. He plays defense better. He plays a more physical presence as Mark Scheifele. He just at least is out there giving it all on both ends of the ice. So if you're in that world, I think that PLD is our number one, and if you're going to trade Mark Scheifele out, you might as well trade him out for one of the best second-line centers in the NHL in Bo Horvat, because he's been so consistent and, like you said, a great leader. He's everything you need in a second-line guy. Me and my friends have always joked about calling him like a Bergeron that doesn't score as much, in a way, with how defensive he is, and his style of play and the respect he carries in the locker room. And I would be completely up to something like that happening. In the real world, there's a lot of other moving parts there, but I think that it would be a very interesting situation to see and something I'd be completely open to.
You know, it's funny when before I joined you guys, I was talking to one of my YouTube members, and he was the one who asked me. He goes, "Do you think we should trade Horvat?" And I said, "Well, who for?" And he goes, "How about Scheifele?" And honestly, guys, my first reaction was I didn't think that Winnipeg would make that move. And then I looked up Scheifele's stats, and then I said this to you guys. It's just a small sample size, but I was surprised that he's only going at 16, right? 8 points in 16 games. And you guys told me that he had COVID, slow start, kind of, second and third line. And then Scheifele, I think, is 2 years older, and so it makes sense that his contract is that's interesting. That's interesting. As I'm talking myself out of it, I think, and Horvat is actually my favorite Canucks player. So
mine too.
Yeah. Okay, I'm convinced Canucks shouldn't make that move then.
Yep, we'd benefit more from it, so I respect that.
Sorry.
That's okay. You know what though? It is Jim betting, so maybe we can pull the cloth over his eyes, blindfold him a little bit. He's made those mistakes.
First power play unit, first line, center, 37 minutes. That's me.
37.
You're gonna hate it. You're gonna hate it. He's going to stay across the line. He's going to slow down
Riley Nash
the line.
on the power play, huh?
Oh God.
Riley Nash is on the power play.
Has been for some time.
Mark Scheifele is so predictable. Mark Scheifele is the most predictable forward ever. It's so annoying as a Jets fan. He skates down. He goes like this, gets to the blue line, kind of goes, He'll do this. Then he'll either do a drop pass to the next forward coming in, or he'll kind of just go, and it's time for a line change. That is the only things he does. And then half the time when it finds out we've scored, it turns out that we were offside on the zone entry. So it's really annoying with Mark Scheifele.
So when he had 80-point seasons, and I think he's had two of them,
he's had so many seasons where he was a point per game.
So what was good about it? Was it his speed at the time? Was it his hot
It was Blake Wheeler.
It was his hot
Blake Wheeler elevated everybody on the Jets offense, right? When you got a guy with back-to-back 91-point seasons in his 30s, only getting better with age, obviously not anymore, but he really elevated that. And also, Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, ironically, have the most empty net goals in the last 6 years in the NHL. It's a stat that no one likes to talk about, but Mark Scheifele, I believe, had 15 points.
Mark Scheifele's first goal this season was going to be an empty netter, but they called it back because he went offside, which is the most Mark Scheifele play I would like to say of the entire season.
I think we lost that game, didn't we?
We did. They would go back.
That game.
Yeah, but that's the thing with Mark Scheifele, though, is with Mark Scheifele before, especially what he was doing was he was kind of a guy who is what a lot of people see him as still as a very the price range for him was really good. He didn't really understand how Mark Scheifele was being used offensively. And for example, the most consistent use I can see of just the surprise value is the 17-18 playoff run. Mark Scheifele goes right in the Mark Scheifele spot in the slot area and would be fed passes for the first 2 rounds all day and would just own that spot top shelf easy. By round 3, it had worn off. So it's one of those things where it's if you know where Mark Scheifele's game is going, you know how to defend against him, but it's one of those things where he'll still catch guys asleep and he can still score. But Mark Scheifele is very predictable in where he goes and plays offensively. I think is just the biggest problem.
And also his defense is non-existent.
We don't even talk about Mark Scheifele.
I don't know.
The last time he defended a play, somebody got concussed is all I want to say. That was the last time. It's not pretty when he plays defense.
Yeah, Clay, just to put this into perspective for you, the analytically speaking for defensive even strength 5-on-5 defensive percentage, Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele are worse than almost anyone in the entire NHL.
Wow!
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, the line of Connor, Wheeler, and Scheifele the last 3 seasons, actually more like 2, but still, is actually been worse than even any of the lines Arizona has iced out in those seasons.
Really?
Yes.
I'm going to send you can see it in the chat. I'm going to show you 2 things for Blake Wheeler that really needs to be take a look at where Blake Wheeler is on that chart.
Oh, so at the very bottom left.
And
yes,
that's the worst pot you can basically
corner.
be.
That's the corner that is bad. That
That's
says
like-
is bad.
That's like AHL potential right there. AHL guy. It's sad, but the hard reality of what he's become the last 2 seasons.
The part of the reason
Wow.
why our winning streak has went ice cold is because we split up the PLD Connor Svechnikov line in favor of putting in more veteran presence. And since then, we haven't won. We've won 1 game on the road.
Wow.
Last 5 games, Blake Wheeler's ice time has been 22 minutes in the Arizona game. 18 against Calgary, 18 against Minnesota, 18 against Columbus, and on over 20 minutes against Pittsburgh. Every single one of those games except Calgary, we've lost. And the Calgary game was kind of a fluke where Calgary played down to their opponent, and it was
Also, Calgary isn't good at home, is what we've realized as well.
As well. So it's been a weird season for us, just like it's been a weird season for the Canucks in no sense, and it's why we want to have you on. I really see a lot of similarities right now at this exact date and time with kind of where the fandom is in a sense, not to the, obviously to the extreme as the Canucks, like I've stated, but it's very all kind of tied together. I feel like there's a lot of Canadian teams right now, like kind of the Leafs as well. You know, the Leafs at the start of the year, everyone had their pitchforks out. It was a mob mentality, the weak start, and no one's saying that anymore. But I feel like the Canucks and Jets have kind of settled into this groove that is very consistent with each other's kind of play style lately. But again, that's just one fan's perspective. But
And you guys you had a really good start to the year, because I remember everyone was talking about, even when you guys came here November 19, they were talking about that you were still first or second in the Central, right?
I believe we were first in the Central at that time. That was
That's
when the
because
skid
we'd
started.
only lost 1 game in overtime before this whole streak
And
thing
the
happened.
Canucks,
Wow.
and the Jets kind of dominated that game too against the Canucks, in my opinion.
just fell behind
they,
early.
They did. That's really what killed them. And Demko made some really killer saves. I was like row 7 on the Canucks side there
Nice.
for a while, and
Yeah.
Demko was just killing it, man. Like, it was incredible. But it's just kind of been one of those rough starts. You know, the skid starts with the shootout loss to Edmonton. Then you lose to the Canucks in the dying minutes. You score that goal. You have a good push. You don't get enough. You lose. And then after that, you just go down this tread of bad games, losing 1-0 to Arizona, 7-1 in Minnesota, and it's never ending. Getting shut out by Columbus 3-0. And
In the last 5 games, Mark Scheifele's plus minus was -2, -1, -3. 2 in the game we beat Calgary, and then a -1 in a game we lost 1-0.
Even I can figure that one out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's honestly, it was amazing because I was there, and immediately after they scored, this woman behind me was like, "Look what line is out!" And I went, "Jesus, we are catching on! Holy crap, the casuals are catching on!"
it's about time. Like I said, it's been the first time unanimously that the media and the fandom has kind of come together and been like, Paul Maurice deserves to be on a hot seat, you know, and
Wow.
I couldn't be any
He's
happier
been here
about
for
that.
what?
8 years. 8
now?
years.
8 years we've been with this guy.
So
Yeah.
they actually the same length as Jim Benning now. No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But does anyone talk about Cheveldayoff, or is it all about
See,
Maurice?
it's-
Chevy usually
blame
avoids that
Cheveldayoff because
of his Chevy's drafting skills, and since he's
flawless.
brought in the
Got some
proper,
really good
like,
drafting.
his drafting is elite, and the fact that he's made the trades that we kind of asked him to make has really kept him off of it. Like it's kind of like what I told you. It's like earlier what I said. We have the pieces. It's just they're not playing well at sometimes. Like I can't really blame the guy for the pieces he brings in. You just kind of have to, like, the players need to play at the end of the day.
And you know what? I feel like one of the most important moves that obviously Cheveldayoff was involved in was that Line A trade where, you know, the Jets had really lost a lot of negotiating power. So the return for Line A, I think a lot of his Jets
Swoop
fans
in.
expected it to be pretty slim. Just because of, you know, it was pretty well known that everyone knew that Line A wanted out. And everyone knew that Roslovic wanted out. So we needed to find a team that had just as shitty negotiating power as we did. And lo and behold, the Columbus Blue Jackets situation.
God bless John Tortorella for that one, my
Goes
friends.
on the ice and he doodles around
God.
and it goes on on TSN and Sportsnet everywhere, which is just a golden gem of an opportunity for the Jets.
Right.
Now we're thinking, great, both of us are equally worthless in negotiating power. Let's do it with each other so we can both get a decent return. And I think, honestly, it's looked like we've gotten the better return as of right
You
now.
can argue, but as
That's
of right
the
now,
thing,
probably.
though.
But the line thing is a very the line
The line thing is
it's not a
interesting,
good
though.
it's not a good point to talk about when you're trying to praise Cheveldayoff, in my opinion.
I will
'Cause
say
you
this,
said,
though.
Carter,
He
no,
took
hold on
an
one second,
easier
one second.
route. Okay.
Like Carter said, no one had any negotiating power there, and it was 50-50. Like, the first year, Rostovic was the only winner of that trade. Now, Rostovic's still a winner of that trade, but Pierre-Luc Dubois has kind of come into his own, and Patrick Laine has had the injury problems, not to mention as well, he just lost his father. Patrick, condolences there as well. That takes a lot out on a guy. He hasn't had anything really pushing him and getting him to that momentum. What I think is a good idea, an example of why Cheveldayoff shouldn't lose his job because of the Jets' struggle, is because you look at the roster with guys that are on it right now. Andrew Kopp, a 4th-round pick in 2013. Neil Pionk was undrafted. Connor Hellebuck was a 5th-round pick in 2012.
Neil Pionk was the only thing we asked for from Jacob Trouba and our first-round pick that we had originally given up back. That was all we asked for.
An undrafted player, and he's better than Jacob Trouba on a contract that is stellar for the point total he puts up. Adam Lowry, drafted in 2011, a 3rd-round pick. And not to mention that every single one of our first-round picks, minus Jacob Trouba and Patrick Laine, even though Patrick Laine was swapped for the guy that literally went after him, so it kind of cancels out in my opinion, we've kept every first-round pick we've drafted since coming back with Mark Scheifele as our first. And every single one is an elite player. Kyle Connor.
I'd like Nick Ehlers here in Vancouver. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I always rip my friends for that one, and I will until the day he retires. I'll never get over that one. It's David Pastrnak as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Clay, I won't bring up anymore.
Look at Boston. Boston deserved a break though in terms of drafting department.
Yeah,
oh man,
they passed up on Nikolai Ehlers. They passed up on a lot of guys there. Kyle Connor.
Yeah.
But either way, that's just my big thing about why. And then also, not to mention, bringing in Nate Schmidt for a 3rd-round pick. He's having a great bounce-back year. But he's made stellar moves, and he's spent right up to the cap and built a team that should be winning. In my opinion, the biggest reason why the Jets are struggling is misusage of players, and that comes down to the coach
best team
and the system. Exactly. This is the best
team
we've had
for
since
the
Western Conference final run.
Also worth noting, this is the best kind of let's be realistic here. For the locale and the place that we live in, this is probably the best team you're gonna get. You can only get so much. A lot of times you look and you'll look at teams and be like, well, this team was in their no trade clause, so you can't really do anything there. A lot of teams, we actually had to get a guy who originally had us on their theoretical no trade clause. So that, you can't ask for anything more than that. And honestly, with what Carter was saying about the Laine thing, I would say this: the easy route when trading Patrick Laine was to ask for picks. That was the easy route. The more ambitious route was to actually ask for a player in return of that, because it's very hard to gauge a player in comparison to a guy like Patrick Laine, who is seen as such a scoring phenom and a young player to boot. I think that was the more ambitious path that they took in getting Pierre-Luc Dubois. And honestly, Pierre-Luc Dubois, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois has a better case for making Team Canada than Mark Scheifele does, for
Absolutely.
sure. And honestly, he's the guy. We look at Mark Scheifele, and you think about, he could be maybe the first extra that Team Canada has. Pierre-Luc Dubois could very well make Team Canada on the 4th line. And I wouldn't be upset with that because of the amount of points and the amount of times that he's carried pretty much every line that he's been on. Even in games where we deserve to do nothing, even in horrendous 7-0, 7-1 losses to the Minnesota Wild, he scores. In games where it looks like it could go to overtime, he'll score. He puts up points that he needs to, and it honestly shows that last year was more of a problem of just being on COVID protocol, and the move was more of the issue. A lot like what the Canucks went through last year. But yeah, Chevy has not been on the hot seat, I don't think. I think, honestly,
only thing Chevy was on the hot seat for was the Chicago stuff, which we won't get into, but that's a completely different story in itself. Sure. It's nothing to do with what he has put on the ice and the results the team has done. But
his drafting is great. His
phenomenal.
trades are acceptable.
He's actually got the best. I've actually looked this up, and a lot of people don't believe me when I say this. Kevin Cheveldayoff has the best drafting record for picks since, obviously it's a smaller sample size, 10 years, but with the amount of picks the Jets have used, we have the highest percentage of players that have ever played for us with our draft picks than any other team in the league with our drafted development.
Look at guys that we even brought in, for example, Brandon Tanev.
Undrafted.
Was undrafted. We just picked him off free agency. We were like, you know what? Want him. He is now a staple of... He was a staple when he was loved when he was playing in Penguins by Penguins fans, and he's pretty much a staple of this new Seattle team. Kevin Cheveldayoff will get you players that will fill out a roster, no matter what.
Easily.
And at the very least, it becomes almost like one of the inside jokes that Winnipeg becomes like an organ donor for so many other teams because their players are good enough to play on other rosters. Sammy Niku and Ben Sherratt and Joel Armia all crack the Montreal roster.
Mm-hmm.
Tucker Pullman, who wasn't the most respected here, cracks the Vancouver
He gets
roster.
a pretty handy contract to boot as well,
Right.
and apparently was offered
Asset
by
to
other
Myers.
teams as well. He was actually like a sought-after asset.
Derek Forbert,
Supposedly,
who Derek
Supposedly,
Forbert somehow
very good point.
cracked Boston's roster. Like, it's one of those things where no matter what, you still have guys that can work for other teams and were good enough to the point where nobody was really a true bust.
Well, people also forget even Brendan Lemieux. Funny with the biting guy, but Brendan Lemieux is a Jets draft pick in the second round.
And he played fine when he was here. He played on a leash when he played in Winnipeg. They traded him to New York, which he looked thrilled about. Let me tell you.
Was he traded?
He looked dead.
That was with Kevin Hayes, right?
Yeah, he looked dead inside getting on that trade. But you think that was the thing? Like, that was a bad trade for Kevin Hayes. It doesn't matter though because it loops around where we get Neil Pionk.
That's a different conversation.
We get Neil Pionk back, and
that's why it's not a bad trade. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's what I mean. Like, the trade itself.
We ended up trading Jake. To put it into perspective, we won't spend too long on this. I just always like to defend it because people really rip on it. What we ended up doing with the Rangers that year is we traded Brendan Lemieux, a first-round pick, to get to the Islanders, to the Rangers. And in return, by the end of the year and everything was done, the Jets had Neil Pionk, that first-round pick back, and also got a fifth-round pick.
Heinola?
Yep, which turned into Ville Heinola, and also got a fifth-round pick because they traded the rights of Kevin Hayes to Philly so that they could sign him. And we actually got a pick back in that situation. So I think that was an easy win.
The day before the free agency started, we were like, "Hey Philly, you want the rights?
So
let's go."
We turned basically swapping Lemieux in a first. We turned that into a rental of Hayes, Neil Pionk on a bargain contract, and then getting back that first in Ville Heinola. Exactly. It really was just Brendan Lemieux.
In a way, we traded Lemieux and Trouba for Pionk and Heinola. That's pretty much
and a half a year and a rental of Kevin Hayes for the first round.
Right.
Can't complain with that. But yeah, we're approaching the hour mark, when we like to keep things short and, perfect 1 hour usually, or we can go after that. It doesn't matter. But I feel like we're kind of coming to the end of this conversation. So I want to ask you, Clay, what do you really think, and like as real as you can give me for an answer, where do the Canucks finish at the end of this season? We're not going to talk about the hypothetical trades, the deadline, Pacific and in general in the Central, in the conference and the widescape of everything. Where do you think they're going to end up by the time that 82 games are over?
I think they're going to end up in 5th or 6th. I actually think they're going to finish ahead of Seattle. I think they could finish ahead of LA. So they're not going to finish ahead of Edmonton, Calgary, or Vegas. And I think one of Anaheim or San Jose, maybe not Anaheim, maybe San Jose drops. So if they were to finish in 5th, they'd have to probably pass Seattle, LA, and San Jose, right? With Edmonton, Calgary, Vegas, and Anaheim being ahead of them. Mm-hmm. If they were to come in 6th, then you only have to pass 2 of those teams. Maybe it's Seattle and LA, because I'm just looking at the standings now.
You only got to pass 1 if we're being honest. Seattle's there. Seattle's there. It's passing them. It just you lost, we won. Now we are ahead. That's literally what it is.
Yeah. So I would love to say that somehow, because it's one thing to make top 3 in your division, at least be guaranteed. Then if you're going wild card, then you still got to beat the other 2 teams from the Central, including maybe Winnipeg, that will be, battling there. So realistically, as much as I'm, the founder of the GLCPC, the good-looking, obviously Canucks Positivity Club, I can't sit here and tell you guys in my heart of hearts that they're going to make the playoffs this season. I think they've dug too big of a hole, and it's one thing to say, well, rattle off 10 of the next 14, but you're not in a vacuum, right? There's other teams that are still winning and still trying to win too. So ultimately, to answer your question, Jake, I'm going to say they come in 6th. They beat LA and Seattle. LA comes in 7th. Seattle comes in 8th. But they run out of runway to catch Edmonton, Calgary, Anaheim, Vegas, and even maybe San Jose.
I think that's where I would probably put them. I think there's realistically, at the end of the day, I think that Anaheim and San Jose will drop out. So I think that and I think LA as well. They're going to be just mediocre and stay exactly kind of where they are. So I think if the Canucks can get something put together, a little bit of a run, there's a chance. But realistically, like what you're saying, I really see a 5th place finish most likely for the Canucks.
The problem is, though, also too, is we should also mention is that usually statistically speaking and historically, the wild card gets very clogged up with Central teams a lot of the time.
Yes,
Like usually, like every single wild, like for the last few years, at least you get at least one wild card from the Central, and sometimes you'll get two, which is kind of like because the Central gets very top heavy at the top 5. Like even if one team is miles ahead, it's kind of like that, and then the Pacific kind of just like they'll fit one in there, and then they'll kind of fit one in there, and then they'll fit one in there. So it's a tough road if you're going wild card route for sure.
Guys, I'll put this in perspective for you. Vancouver has 24 games played, 18 points. Let's say you got to get to 94, right, for the playoffs. That means they need 76 points in the remaining 58 games. The Canucks would have to go 36, 18, and 4. Take away the 4 shootout overtime losses. 36 and 18, that's double. That's 2 wins out of every 3 games. That's tough in this league.
That is very tough. That is, yeah, I can see why you're being very.
No, I'm sad. I'm gonna go upstairs and cry myself to sleep now. Thanks, guys.
I can't blame you. Can't blame you. I'm gonna have to do the same thing. I'm gonna write that down real quick. Actually, let my stepdad know. He's a huge Canucks
36.
fan. I'm just gonna ruin his night.
Tell him 36, 18, and 4.
36.
Get you to 94 points.
36, 18, and 4. All right, I'm totally doing 90,
that. Because mid-90s, I think, is usually the range, right? Yeah. Like that's usually the range.
Out of the wild card spots, I think it'll be an even split between the Central and the Pacific, probably.
Really?
With one.
Could happen.
I mean, I think that Vegas will move up. I think Anaheim will drop to the second wild card spot.
That's reaching.
Someone in the Central
I know, but
is going to be in that wild card spot. Right now, it's Colorado. I doubt it. I think Colorado's going to kick it up. But
so Carter, you got Edmonton, Calgary, Vegas, Anaheim. Then is your 4, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I respect that.
Yeah,
I can see that being a real possibility.
Yeah. Unless Calgary drops to 3rd, they could.
Calgary is going to be a wait and see as usual.
Calgary's
though.
in a little bit of almost kind of a weird spot because I mean a lot of us, myself included, thought the Calgary would be selling at the deadline this year.
We thought they were blowing it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna blow it up. I thought that Monahan and Joe were on the hot seat out of everyone there. No pun intended. But the yeah, I mean they've been kind of almost overperforming, and I'm not sure how long that goes for. So I think there's a possibility that Calgary will either finish 3rd or 2nd wild card spot if they really kind of drop it a bit harder. So.
I don't see Calgary dropping below 3rd, honestly. Like, I think the biggest question mark teams you have are the teams in California. Those are the big question mark
because
teams.
they're the ones outperforming where they were expected to be. That's the big
like
reason.
San Jose makes no let's
it really doesn't.
San Jose, like let's.
I know
let's
Twisted Wrister's happy. I know that Twisted Wrister's happy about that.
Okay, but like, yeah, great job, Twisted. But like, let's keep in mind, San Jose is doing this on the back of James Reimer's decrepit body at this point. Like James Reimer decides the fate of the entire San Jose Sharks. That is a terrifying prospect, and somehow one that is being fulfilled so far.
Well, Mark Schumer's got to come back to Earth, right? Well, I say that as a Demko fan. Mark Schumer's
Man's not coming back.
Nope, he's finally arrived in Calgary.
Man's got like 7 shutouts.
I miss
in like
my
3
boy.
games.
I
don't even know how he does it.
I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
I wanted him to stay,
Yeah,
but you know what? As long as he got paid and he's having a good year, that's all I can ask for. Guy was
that
great,
first year we
great
thought he was
for
gonna
us.
be he was gonna be an absolute waste for Calgary.
Yep.
Like because Calgary picked up all those guys and then for the first year they didn't do well. We were like, ha, sucks. And then they were like, no, we're good.
Right. Well, I think that's gonna round up our time here. We've approaching that. We've passed a little past that hour mark, so I like to keep things like we're in that perfect time. I feel like it's like the money spot, you know. So with all that being said, Clay, thank you so much. We always like to give our guests a chance at the end of the show to shout out any of their stuff, obviously of your YouTube channel, so you can inform the viewers about anything to check out. All of your links we'll have down in the description below. Give exactly time for the plug.
Well, thank you. I mentioned it once before, but I am the founder of the GLCPC, the Good Looking Canucks Positivity Club, a completely fictional, made-up club, no registration, no application fee, and if I'm the founder, then you know that the standards aren't that high. But here's the deal, guys. My whole shtick, it's not even a shtick, and you guys know this from our interactions, is I'm positive, I'm optimistic, I'm realistic, and I always say on my vlogs that it's my Canucks take all in one take. Subscribe now for daily Canucks insight that's positive, timely, and trustworthy. So if anyone wants to follow me on YouTube, just simply look up Canuck Clay. Maybe Jake, you can link it in the description down below. Whatever,
sure,
just look up Canuck Clay.
Absolutely will.
And on Twitter, I'm the same at Canuck Clay as well. And other than that, you guys, it's been a lot of fun. You guys, I don't think my kids will watch. So I'll say you guys are almost maybe you're more mature than my son. Actually, I'm not sure yet. I have to.
I doubt that.
I
doubt that.
You gotta get us at a game. I
doubt
think
that.
you'll really see our true side.
Big fire
Keep it
outside.
professional.
But it was great.
Obviously, he's seen none of our content.
But it was great chatting with you, talking about Winnipeg, talking about Vancouver, and talking about this whole Western Conference, and talking about the game that we love to talk about and spend a lot of time, energy, and money talking about. So thank you guys for having me, and yeah, ring me up anytime. This is a lot of fun.
We definitely will have you back on, my friend. So with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen,
Lovely.
thank you so much for watching this episode. Make sure to check out all of our affiliated links down in the description below. You can follow the Prairie Puck Podcast on Spotify. Listen to it on the go whenever you want. We're also available on Apple Music. With all that being said, peace, love, and positivity, all you beautiful people out in the world. Have a great rest of your day. Go Jets, go. Go Canucks, go. And we will see you all very soon with another episode. Have a great rest of your night. Bye-bye.